Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with my special guest, Wayne McFarland. Welcome.
Hey you.
Now, you're an author, but
yep.
you're also a CEO of a software company.
Yeah, we sold that bad boy, and I'm telling you, so I wrote this memoir, which has nothing to do with software, because after about a year of catching fish, I said, if I catch one more, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to drown myself in the river. You know, I'm just not too good at being retired, I guess.
Yeah. And neither am I, so we're good. That's why we write books and do other things.
That's right.
So where did you get to the idea to write your first book?
Well, you know, I've always been an avid reader, and I've always loved biographies and memoirs, and so I suppose I focused a little more of my reading on that. And I woke up one day and I said, man, most memoirs really suck. They're really terrible. And so many of them are full of things like, well, when I was a kid, you could leave your bike on the sidewalk and no one would steal it. And when we wanted to roller skate, we put skates on our shoes and skated down the street. I thought, no one cares. No one cares. You know, I mean, it was important maybe to you when you were a kid, but now, you know, millennials like my niece and nephew will just roll their eyes and go, yeah, you know, give the old man a lollipop and tell him to shut up. And the other thing that I'm believing in, a lot of memoirs tend to either be self-serving or try to maintain that everything was some kind of a great planned, a glorious sweep of life. And Melissa, truth be told, most of us just stumble from one thing to another. And looking back on it, it either looks like or we pretend it was planned. No, that's really not how it works.
So were any of your harrowing experiences planned or they just happened? Like running with the bulls?
It just happened. I mean, I noted in the story that we'd had a birthday party. I'm from a little town in the Midwest, but one of the places I ran off to was Europe. And what do a bunch of younger folks do in Europe on Paris on your birthday? Well, you get drunk. And we got up one morning and a spectacular hangover. And so I just thought, we didn't have a hotel anymore, so bought a train ticket. Heard about this craziness going on in this little town, and we just bought a train ticket and hung over a road to Pamplona where they had the running of the bulls. And so that's kind of how it started. So it was no great Hemingway plan. I hadn't even read his book at the time.
Oh, goodness. So there you are running with the bulls in this little town and just with a hangover.
Well, that's it. And I never would have run at all if I hadn't stumbled into a guy who was a Norwegian paratrooper of all things. And he and his buddies used to go there proving the big macho spirit. And it actually tripped over him because he was sleeping on the ground. And he got up, an affable guy, and he said, I'm running today. I'm running with the bulls. You're coming with me, right? And I said, yeah, sure, of course I'm coming with you. So, but you know, now the event is broadcast worldwide. I mean, there's it's ESPN and there's millions of viewers, and the town is packed with, 1 million people or 1.5 million people, and you have to make reservations in advance. And I mean, when I went, we just got on the train and went there, and yeah, the smaller town, and there are people from all over the world. And the goal of, it's called the Festival of Song for me, the goal is to, it's a week long, 8 days, but for 7 days they row in the bulls. So the goal is to drink all night, run with the bulls in the morning, and then sleep all day. And I was fine with drinking all night and sleeping all day. It was the bulls part that I didn't really feel was such a good idea. So that So there we were, and it was, things have changed a lot. Honestly, when I was there, when we were running down the street with me thinking to myself, I've lost my mind. It's a couple mile run, mile and something, and they block off the streets because there's streets that there's a main drag you run down, and then they block off the streets with a fence. Now, I understand they have two fences, one that blocks the street, and behind that are medical personnel, and then there's a second fence that keeps the crowd, away from the street. Back in the day, we're running down the street, and I thought, I got to get out of here. There's people getting hurt, And I saw these fences to the alleys and stuff, and people were jumping on them, and then they were falling back on the street. And I noticed that everybody who looked like a tourist who jumped on one of these fences, there were Spanish guys on the other side who'd smack them in the face and shout at them, "Hey, you wanted to run? Turista? You wanted to run? Run!" So I thought, well, probably better finish this up, So that was, it was fun when it was over,
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, if you ever go the worst part, I mean, at the time, now it's a co-ed thing, but the last part of the run, there's a long concrete hallway, if you will, entryway to the bull ring, where you end up and they let more havoc loose on you. And if you get caught in there, there's no place to hide. I mean, you're just a concrete box, right?
Right.
And I later found out the problem was not so much getting gored, although I thought that was the problem, but it was people piling up and dying from suffocation.
Ooh.
So, yeah. So I was with a friend of mine. After it was all over, I went back to where we were staying, which was sleeping on the ground in a park, and he was all beat up. And I said to him, "Did you run?" And he said, "No. What are you crazy?" He said, "I met this lady, and she took me up to an apartment that overlooked the street, so I watched all you idiots running." And I said, "Well, how'd you get all beat up?" And he said, "Well, about halfway through, 3 guys broke in and started shouting at me using the word hermanos a lot, which is Spanish for brothers."
Yeah.
Turns out that these were her brothers. And then he told me they grabbed me and threw me down the stairs, but it could have been worse. I said, "They threw you down the stairs? How could it be worse?" And he said, "Well, they were going to throw me over the balcony." I mean, those were the days, But
yeah, those are the good old days that we look back on and go, "What were we thinking?" But they make great stories now.
Yeah, exactly. You know what they say? Today's catastrophe is tomorrow's great story.
Exactly. I mean, how many great books that are out wouldn't have been written if the author had never experienced something?
Well, it's true. And, the thing I think about as I started thinking about some of these events, like pitching a lone shark or getting shot or whatever it may be, mostly stuff like that comes if you just sit on your backside and try to make your life as compact and safe as you can. For one thing, there is no safety anymore, as we've come to find out. But for the other, you're not going to have things that open your view or maybe expand your heart a little bit unless you get out there.
Right. And
then to later pretend that all of the weird stuff that happens to you, you'd really planned it.
I know.
That's when I read memoirs and I said, no, it doesn't work like that.
No, we just pretend that we planned everything.
Yes.
And then when the crazy stuff goes on their lap, we just roll with it because
that's right.
It's just going to get more fun from there, right?
That's exactly right. And, I started thinking about, I got a couple of years on you. I'm not asking none of my beeswax, but, what I tried to do, too, was keep the chapters true, but also shorter, like short stories, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, including Running with the Bulls, there's things like The Day We Lost 10 Grand at the Hollywood Sign, and then The Day We Roped the Bear, and The Day Johnny Cash Hit on My Wife, and...
Oh, you have to tell that story, because that's...
So,
I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan, so you have to tell the Johnny Cash story.
Me too. I love that guy. Well, we were... At the time, I was doing some production work, special effects.
Okay.
These days, what I used to do with 50 big old pieces of equipment called slide projectors, you can now do with one cell phone. So now is better. But what we did is with live stage shows and like the Country Music Awards where all this happened, we'd open it up with, now they're considered music videos, but then they were slides kind of synced to music and lasers and all that stuff. And so we were hired to go in and open the show. And it was being produced by a family group of very popular singers, which is still around, right? And as it turned out, as a production company, that was their first production. And they kind of oversold their capabilities, right? So they didn't give people time enough, it's called load-in time, to set up all their equipment, sound and cameras and whatever. And you can't do things simultaneously. Like you can't set up sound in an arena if people are fooling with lights and so forth. So anyway, our equipment took 2 hours to set up, and we had 45 minutes, so you can imagine, right? So we opened the show, and my God, Melissa, it was a disaster. The only way we got through it was I had the crew fire off all the fireworks at the beginning instead of the end. So when we got done, I went to the backstage bar. My wife had flown in to see the show. She was getting her doctorate in molecular biology. You talk about two different people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my plane does not fly in the arena where she was working at Caltech and MIT and stuff. And so she flew in for the day. and as I retreated, I figured we'd just blown it in front of, 10 million people. She said, I'm going to stay and watch the show. So I came back after having someone buy me a beer of commiseration. And here was this crowd. Melissa, there must have been 200 people, all standing around in a quiet circle.
Okay.
And in the middle was my wife and this big, tall guy, all dressed in black, as they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's earnestly talking to her, and she's shaking her head and kind of laughing. And then he walked off, and everybody kind of dispersed. And I went up to her, and I said, what did he say to you? And she just looked at me and smiled and said, a lot of nonsense. And Melissa, she never, to this day, many years later, she's never told me. I can't pry it out of her what the guy said to her. Yeah, but I said, here's the punchline, right? My biochemist wife. I said, do you know who that was? And she said, no. Who was it? I said, that was Johnny Cash. And she looked me straight in the eye, and I swear to God, she wasn't joking. She said, who's Johnny Cash? So there you go. Fame depends, my new friend, on the crowd you run with,
Exactly. You could be a top-rated actor. If you run across a person that's a bookworm that doesn't watch TV, they're going to go, oh, hello.
Exactly. You need a shave, because most of them do this 5 o'clock shadow thing. Yep. Yeah. Exactly right. So that was it.
Yeah, it's so funny, because you can run in different circles. If you're not in that circle, or if you're not in that mindset, it doesn't matter to anyone what you do.
Yep. And I think, you made the point a bit earlier, Melissa, and I think you're right. One of the things that struck me when I was putting this stuff together is that, I think you get through experiences. Some of them aren't so great. You get through them if you truly understand or have the attitude that today's awfulness can be tomorrow's funny story. And I think some of the memoirs and stuff I read, people don't have that mindset. And they never seem to quite break out of the awfulness of some experiences. And my heart goes out to them, but on the other hand, life goes on, And if you can't do it with a dash of humor and understand maybe the whole universe isn't crapping on you in particular, I think can be a problem for you.
Yes, you have to have the mindset that, one, you want to change what other crappy universe is giving you, and
Yep.
two, you have to find the humor. I mean,
Yeah.
We're sitting here right now in the pandemic. A lot of us are home, not doing anything. Either we're out of a job or we're working from home.
Yep.
And you have to find the humor in the day-to-day. It's like how much we complain all the time. We don't have enough time to be home, to clean the house, to be with the kids.
I don't want to have enough time to clean the house. Stop.
I know. I'm the queen of making work. I'm like, I cannot be idle, people. So what am I doing? I'm doing 4 radio shows a day. I can't be idle.
There you go.
Work. It doesn't work.
Wait, before you go on, can I give a shameless plug?
Go ahead.
The book is Tales from the Day, sold on Amazon and good bookstores everywhere, but I'd recommend Amazon. Jeff Bezos needs the money.
There you go.
Okay.
See, I prefer Barnes & Nobles because...
Yeah, it's there too.
Yeah. But we all have our preferences. I just like being able to go into a bookstore and say, if it's not on the shelf, I go, can I order it then?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's not the virus, but the world is changing, and I'm just the world's greatest mall rat and store rat. I love going into bookstores, and I love going into stores and the people and stuff, and I think that's going away. It was going away before the virus, but...
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be more, I don't want to see the computer for a while at this point. We want to have human interaction because, seriously, we're stuck at home with our families. How much interaction can you get from your family before you want to scream?
Or strangle them all. But also it's a human need, I think. It's just part of our DNA to be out amongst other folks. But things are changing. A lot of good news seems to be on the horizon, but it'll be end of year at least before we see a vaccine. Then things will get back to the...
Yeah, it'll be next year before we see a normal. It's not going to be when they just, hey, the stores will open, let's go have normal back. No, it's going to be a while.
Yeah. Well, plus the fact that, it's so contagious, and with all these folks, demonstrating like a pack of idiots about, when I tell folks, of course my wife is a biochemist, but the virus doesn't care. It doesn't care that you and I may want to go to have a restaurant meal. It doesn't care. It doesn't care what our politics are. It just cares about infecting us and killing us, or having us carry the virus around to kill our parents or infect our friends. The virus, that's its life, if you will. And trying to pretend that protesting or shouting or ignoring it is going to work. It ain't going to work.
No, we can't ignore things because they don't go away. And a virus is just there. Its main purpose is to find a host to survive, to mutate and reproduce. That's what a virus's job is.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I was reading today that Georgia, which is the first state who opened up with the governor, pontificating this and that. Now they've had a huge spike of infection. They've got some hospitals being overwhelmed. What a shock.
Mm-hmm.
What a surprise that is, right?
Exactly.
So,
but, we give into peer pressure. This is what happens. We have government agencies. We're giving into peer pressure.
Yep.
And then we don't use our head.
Well, that's it, and it's just, I tell you, I suppose this kind of counts. If the virus would just infect and kill the idiots who, are doing this stuff, that'd be one thing. But the idiots can be asymptomatic and infect you and me, and our families and our kids. So it's not just risking them. I believe if you want to be an idiot, that's your right. But if by being an idiot you can hurt me and mine,
that's
not in favor of that.
No, I'm not either. I mean, I have me and two of my author friends who are doing a journal. We've been keeping the journal since January, before it actually came to the U.S., where we started seeing deaths and all this destruction and everything. But
that was a really good idea.
Yeah.
Really, you and Samuel Pepys, really seriously, for a historical document. What a good idea. Good for you.
Yeah, we've been keeping it off and on. I mean, there's periods we don't write in it, and there's periods that is humorous, periods we're scared out of our mind, because I was infected with it. I was sick, down for 2 weeks, couldn't move, basically.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So,
yikes.
So you have my friends, they're writing this, and they're worried. You have me and everything I've already survived, and I'm like, no, this virus isn't going to kill me. If 3 strokes isn't going to kill me, this virus is not going to be what kills me.
Wow.
So,
wow. You're the first person I've talked to. I have relatives back in the Midwest who got sick with this, but you're the first person I've talked to who, went through it, and you sound great. You sound recovered.
Thank you.
No, I'm not kissing up just because you're helping me promote my book. I mean, really.
Thank you.
You do 4 shows a day?
I'm doing 4 shows a day right now.
Well, you must have some good...
I'm just completely out of my mind.
Well, you must have some good gargling, because, man, that's a lot of talking.
Yeah, pretty much. It's called a little bit of alcohol.
Yes, the show of the wine lubrication.
Yes, just a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I don't know what I expected during this interview, but this is not it. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, see, I try to keep everything nice and fluid because I want authors to connect with readers, but we don't connect with readers just talking about a book. So we connect with them with the human element.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's true and everything. I don't know, Melissa, in a way how you do it. I mean, I watch interviews sometimes, and there's nothing worse, I'm sure, as an interviewer than to get some interviewee on the line who is just a lump.
Yes.
Tell me about your book. Well, it's done. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. There's days that I interview people. I love interviewees like yourself that are high energy, fun to talk to, but there's those ones that come on, and it's their first interview ever, and it's like pulling teeth to get an answer. Yeah. I'm like, have fun with it. Own it. You did something exciting.
They're probably terrified,
Yes. Well, having wrote my first book and having my first interview back in 2016, I can understand.
Wow. God, that's fantastic. How did it do first time out of the chute?
Actually, it's been republished now 4 times.
Ah, so, you devil, you. Good for you.
Yeah.
Let's plug that. What's the name?
The first book was called The New Reign. Uh-huh. That is actually the 3rd book in the I read out of order. So it's actually the second to last book of the series, So there's 2 prequels, but then there's 2 spin-offs to the series that are intertwined between the 4 books.
Hey, it worked for George Lucas. Should work for you.
Exactly. Right? I was at a book signing 2 years ago, and they said, you pulled a Star Wars. I was like, hey, we're now using Star Wars as a verb.
Exactly. And, you've heard about inspiration. This is what struck me first, so get over it. Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, Tales from the Day is not a prequel. I think I'd squeeze the lemon pretty dry on that.
So, are you working on anything else right now?
Well, I decided I'm gonna, I sat down to maybe add some more tales to the book, and you know how it is, Melissa. I think that when you're talking about stuff in your own life, you're not making stuff up. It's not a work of fiction. That you can keep adding stuff to it, but if you're reaching, if you think about an event. I worked on one story and I got it done. And I said, I'm done here. What's the interest in the story? The point is, it isn't any. There wasn't any. There was nothing unusual about it. I thought it was well written and people seemed to like it, but that's not. And I just thought I'm not going to put together another book of tales where the tales are a stretch. Let me tell you about the time we had a big party in Minneapolis. Well, whoop-de-doo, So to answer your question, we're kind of kicking around the idea of doing a work of fiction based on a old Victorian house we moved to a lake location in South Dakota. It was quite a thing. So, but the best part of that, it was this old Victorian house, and we had been through a couple of real estate adventures, my wife and I, involving a big house in Malibu and some other things, and we swore we were never going to get involved with a big house again. I mean, it's really a lot of trouble, So we opened. I'm from South Dakota originally, so we opened some tech support there for our software company. And during the course of it, we bought a little lake lot on a lake called Big Stone for good reason. And one day, my wife, who I blame for this, said, instead of building a house on the lake lot, a little log house or something, let's just move a house. There's some beautiful old houses here. And in the Midwest, that's common. People do that all the time. You don't do it in California, but, So I put the word out I was looking. So one day, I get a call from a family that's been there forever of house movers. And they said, listen, we moved a house. It's like 3 generations, right? Said, we moved a house 50 years ago. And now the place where we moved it to has been bought, and it's for development. And the buyers are either going to tear it down or burn it down. And he said, we'll move that for you. Yeah, I think you'll like it. So I went to look at this place, and Melissa, I got to tell you, it just took my breath away. It was this beautiful Victorian wraparound porch thing. Yeah, and I went there hoping it was going to be trashed and ugly, and instead it was beautiful, right? So my wife was out of town at the time, and I sat down on the steps, and I thought, oh, my God, how am I going to tell her about this one, So she came back to town, and I said, look, I know our vow that we weren't going to do this again, but let me show you this place. And we're driving to it, and we get out, and she took a look at it, and she said, how old is this place? And I said, 103 years old. And then I started the pitch, right? The Wayne pitch on why we should. And she just held up her hand and said, time to be quiet, She went through the whole house. And when we were all done, I said, well, what do you think? And she looked at me and she said, we are not going to let this beautiful lady die. And that was that. But and we moved it 80 miles to the lake, and it became kind of a landmark. I loved it. I loved that place. We lived there for years, and it tried to kill me once. But how was I supposed to know that there were 100 years of dust mites in the place and that I had an allergy, right? Yeah.
Right.
I didn't know. So, but the best part, there is a best part, is that when we moved the house, there was this huge basement underneath that had a huge bar in it. I mean, beautiful. I don't know how old. Huge. Must have been 20. I think we measured it 25 feet or something with a back bar, and we couldn't take it. I mean, they literally apparently built it in the basement before they put the house on it.
Right.
And it was really heavy, and so we moved the house off, and we had to fill it in. And so I thought, well, we'll just give the bar to somebody, and we'll do a tax write-off, right? So I called everybody. I called all the VFW clubs and everybody I could think of who might want a free bar worth all kinds of money, and it was just too big. So finally one day, a local politician said, call this guy, Captain somebody or another, at the Salvation Army. And I said, Salvation Army? They were founded on not drinking, and you want me to call them and offer them a bar? He said, yeah, you might be surprised. Yeah, of course, why not? So I called this guy up. He was a captain, right? Mm-hmm. And I told him what we had and whatever, and he interrupted me and said, we'll take it. And I thought, oh, okay. And I said, well, the thing weighs about 2 tons. He said, oh, good. Thanks for telling me. I'll bring some help. So on the day we're going to move it, up comes this huge Salvation Army semi-truck and 2 buses full of convicts from the local jail. And apparently the Salvation Army took them on road trips down again. So I don't know how many guys there were. It must have been 40 guys, all in their uniforms, right? It looked like a scene from a bad Southern chain gang movie. So these guys get out, they lift up the bar and the back bar, and they put it in the Salvation Army truck, and Gloria and I look at each other going, what? And finally, as they were getting ready to leave, I went up to Captain and I said, listen, you mind if I ask you a question? And he said, no, what is it? And I said, well, weren't you guys founded on being teetotalers? I said, and now you're taking a bar. And he just looked at me, and he looked up to the sky, and he looked back at me, and he said, the Lord works in a mysterious way. And off they went. That was it.
That is awesome.
So, oh my God, that's one of the stories.
You've had so many wonderful adventures. I mean, it's just awesome.
Some of them look better, like you and I were talking in retrospect. But they're all in. They're all in the book. Tales from the Day. Another plug. Oh man, it's a bargain.
So where can our listeners find you?
They can go to www.talesfromtheday.com.
There we go. Perfect.
And on the book and the website, yes, my picture is there. That's the benefit of the whole thing, you know?
Yes, I mean, this is the benefit. Everyone gets to see the man that did all these crazy, wonderful things. And live to tell about them.
Yeah. They asked me for a bio, and one of the lines in there is that one of the biggest, accomplishments is not being dead.
Yeah, I did see that. I'm like, after reading or hearing some of these stories and reading a little bit about them, I'm like, how did you survive all these things? But you're here for a reason, right? And this reason it was to put this book out and give us all something to laugh about from back in the day.
I hope so. I hope you're right. We'll soon see. But again, you can't take yourself too seriously. So there are some serious stories in here about getting shot, and a friend of mine who got involved in the Vietnam War, and it did not go well for him when he got home. But they're only like maybe 15% of the stories. The rest of them are the bar, rope the bear type stories,
Right, the funny, the humorous, the how did you survive this? But there are those stories in there that are real life, and they're touching. Because
thank you.
So again, thank you so much for your service.
Well,
and,
you're very welcome.
And I would love to talk to you if you ever get that fictional book wrote about your house, because I think that's going to be awesome as well.
Well, thank you so much, and you take care of yourself. I'm glad you recovered so well from the virus. Jeez, wow. Yeah. I'm just locking myself up in the house, trying not to repeat it. But the problem is, of course, you probably have no idea how you caught it. You could have gotten it anywhere.
Well, right at the time, I was the only one in the family that could drive. Well, I'm still the only one that can drive. So I was taking family members to doctor's appointments, taking to medical procedures, going to stores.
Yeah.
Even with masks and gloves and everything else, this was back in early March.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
well, you're right.
Yeah.
The more exposure you get, if you get exposed a lot, the more likely you are to become really ill from it. So, jeez, well, what a pleasure talking with you, my new friend.
It was a pleasure talking to you too, Wayne, and I hope to do this again.
Okay, anytime.
Of course. This was fun. This was a quick half hour.
All right.
Seriously.
Well, there you go. how's your? I hear your show's doing very well, by the way.
It is. It's doing well. It went from listeners on IG, Instagram TV, went from 300. I get usually about 1,600 listeners within 6 minutes.
Oh, fantastic. Great. Good for you. Fantastic. All right. Great. Well, thanks for the shot.
It was wonderful talking to you, and we'll do this again.
Anytime, my friend.
Awesome day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.